I remember when I used to work for a company, I was hired and I had a salary and I had benefits, and I would go to work every day at the same time, come off of work every day at the same time, and get paid every month the same amount. When I stopped doing that and became a therapist, I didn't know how much I was going to make each week or each month. I didn't know if I would be able to pay my health insurance. Things became a little bit trickier. And when you are an independent worker or an entrepreneur, every decision about your business becomes a whole world. How much money am I going to invest? What is this going to mean for my future? What does this mean for my rent, for my food, for my ability to hang out with friends or to travel? Our question today is just about that. And I'm really excited to speak with our guest, Brandon. I'm Mauricio Bruce, and this is The Real Question. Hi, Brandon. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mauricio. How are you?
I'm very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to speak today.
So, you know that we're starting the show with a question that I ask you before you get to bring your question. It's a very open-ended question, but it also is very fun, which is, if you could tell me one thing about yourself, what's the one thing you would share?
I would say I'm someone who really likes to get to the bottom of things. I love to see how things work and why they work, and maybe sometimes I can take it a little too far. I can get a little obsessive about finding the answer to something or solving a specific problem, but I think that's a pretty important part of my personality.
Would you say that's curiosity? Would you say that's like your little inner detective? What would you call that?
Probably both. I definitely think I'm a curious person, but I'm also a very analytical person, so I always want to understand, again, why things work the way they are, why they're done a certain way, or if they can be done a different way. I like to kind of imagine other ways of doing things.
What's the last thing you sort of got curious about and went down a little rabbit hole?
I think probably kind of a continuous one for me is around philosophy and religion. I grew up evangelical Christian, and I was very deeply ingrained in that world for a long time until I realized maybe I didn't relate to it as much as I thought I did. So I think I spent a lot of time over the years kind of figuring out what is true for me. And I think it's a constant journey. It's funny because I said I'm someone who likes to get to the bottom of things, but this is something I think I've learned to accept the mystery and kind of appreciate that I'll never have the full answer.
Okay, you'll come back and we'll do another episode about that. But you have a question for us today that you brought, and I'd love to hear what your question is.
Sure. So my question is, should I expand my business? And to give you a little more background about that, my husband and I started a business about 8 years ago, a restaurant and specialty coffee shop. We started with one location in 2017. We now have 3 locations, and it's been a lot of work and a lot of learning along the way, a lot of stress. And so I think we've debated and kind of landed on different sides of this topic throughout the years of how far we want to take it or how far we want to grow.
And now you're here. Why does this question come up now? Like, why are you considering, should I expand? Or like, what's going on with the business right now?
So right now we're actually about a week away from opening a new location. We're moving one of the 3 restaurants to a new location that we're hoping will be much more successful, larger, and we can grow into that. But recently we were approached by a real estate developer that has a location available in a very nice part of town that I think has a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential. And I think it's a place we've kind of imagined growing to eventually, but the timing of it feels kind of crazy. But I think like a lot of things, there's never like a perfect moment to take on a new project, or maybe there is, I don't know. But for us, it always feels like, is this the right time? Can we actually achieve this or not? Is doable? And this is something that's actually come up many times. We've been presented different possibilities and different opportunities, and we've said no to a lot of things. And so it's always a very extensive process of kind of like looking inward and trying to be realistic with what we think we can do and what's right for us. And so this has been kind of a continuation of that process, I would say.
So I think this is really interesting. Somebody approached you and said, "Hey, we want you to expand. We've got the perfect location for you. Come put your restaurant in." And you're telling me this has happened before and you guys have said no. What's keeping you from saying no this time? What is there or what's going on within you and outside of you that is making you come to the show and say, should I expand my business?
With this one, I think it is a prime location, and we've learned that location is fundamental. And being in one of the nicest areas of the city and a nice development also brings a certain level, I guess, of prestige or even validation. And so I think it would kind of feel like we're making it to the next step by opening this other location.
So those two words are important, right? Prestige and validation.
Yes. And I want to be careful with that because I guess if I'm being honest with myself, there's some part of me that's motivated by external factors, but I think there's a very large part of me that really just wants to build something beautiful and create something and take on a new project and a new challenge. But of course, the validation from the community, from customers that are happy, and seeing our business successful in multiple locations definitely is motivating and feels good.
Brandon, as I hear you talk and you talk about this part of yourself that really wants to build something beautiful, right? There's a part that wants prestige and validation, which is really great. But then there's another part that you mentioned that's more interior, that's more you and your relationship to building, to business, to creating, to exploring. I'm just wondering, what makes you nervous about the expansion?
Yeah, well, restaurants are extremely stressful. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with equipment, managing people, customers that are unhappy, the risk of someone getting sick in your restaurant, or whatever thing that could possibly go wrong. There's so many things that kind of keep us up at night sometimes. So I know I don't want to live like on edge forever, and definitely not for too long, but I also kind of feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm willing to grind a little bit to maybe get to a certain stage. And I don't know what that stage is. Maybe I need to think about what the end game is here.
Yeah, so that's my question. You're saying I'm willing to grind a little bit to get to that next place. I want to push it a little further, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, there's like practical reasons for that. I want to have like a financially secure future. I don't want to have to worry about struggling in retirement. To even give some more background, my dad kind of struggled with work most of his life, and that might be another driver, a motivator for me to want to succeed, because I saw how much my parents struggled with money. And I know money is definitely not the most important thing, but being stressed about money really sucks.
So keep going with that thought. I saw this in my parents. That's a motivator for me to keep going. I don't want to struggle with money. I don't want to be stressed about money. And so, is that the next place? I keep going, I grind, I push so that I get to a place where I'm just comfortable with money.
I think comfortable probably is the correct word. And I could probably just be a little patient, because I think based on our current trajectory, I think we could be in a really comfortable position in a few years after we pay off some of the investment in our last expansion. Every time we take on a new project, it's kind of feels like the goal line is being pushed a little further back, because we take on more risk. Sometimes we take on more debt, and we kind of really do as much as we can with the resources we have. And so it kind of feels like, oh, okay, a few more years. And then we do another project. Okay, it'll be another few more years that might be difficult, but eventually things will be a little more calmer and we can find more peace.
So that's interesting right there, Brandon. I could wait a couple more years. I could be patient, and it'll get to that point where I can just have some stability, have some security, and have some comfort.
Yeah.
That's what I heard you say, right? So, why the question of expansion? What does expansion add into that mix? Or perhaps, what does expansion give to you? What's the rush, or what's the excitement, or what's that part of you that wants to build something beautiful that says, I can't just sit and wait for a couple of years. I want to expand. I want to grow.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned something there like the rush. And I definitely think that is the part of it. I tend to be a little more restless. Like I said, I like to take on new projects and new challenges. Otherwise, I get bored and maybe a little stagnant and maybe feel a little directionless in my life. And so maybe sometimes I feel like I need that pressure to keep moving forward. But it's a bit of a paradox because I also want to have a more calm life and more balance and
You did say you want more stability and comfort and security.
yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm wondering, you say I like to take on new projects. I like to sort of keep myself going. You said at the beginning, I like to get to the bottom of things. I'm curious. I like to explore. Does it have to be by expanding the business, or are there other projects and other ways that you can keep yourself busy?
I think there are other ways and other things, but I don't know what they are yet.
Mm.
But we have had some early successes, and so part of me also wants to keep building on that momentum. And I also want our business to be a business that lasts for a long time. I kind of have a fear that maybe we'll become less relevant after a few years if we don't keep pushing forward and innovating and reaching new markets or new people. So I think there's definitely like a fear component. Like, do we need to be kind of a certain size, have like critical mass to have enough momentum to sustain us for many, many years?
And I just want to ask if the fear that I heard there, I'm afraid that we will become irrelevant, that we won't last, that we will be forgotten. What's the fear?
I hate that it keeps coming back to this, but I think maybe the fear is about money. Maybe I have a deep seated trauma from how I grew up and watching my parents struggle.
You're trying to fight against having those money struggles that you saw your family go through.
Yeah. And I think I saw the regret my dad had, one, for not finishing university. He went through until his last semester and decided to take a job instead of graduate. And that really came back to haunt him at different points in his life. He got laid off in the early 2000s after the tech bubble burst, and he was without a job for a couple of years at a time. And then he worked for another company for a while and then didn't get along with the manager there and lost his job. And so it was just so much back and forth and so much struggle. And I saw the impact it had on his own happiness and on the entire family.
Yeah. And so I think the big word that you said there was regret, right? Like it seems like your dad had some regrets. And you, in trying to differentiate yourself, I'm going to suggest here, you can push back, but you're trying to make sure you don't have regrets.
Yeah. And I don't have regrets. I'm actually very satisfied with the trajectory my life has taken me so far. So,
But so here's where I wonder, is that attached at all to the question, should I expand my business?
perhaps. I think maybe the part of that is the fact that I left the corporate world to focus fully on this business. And sometimes when I think about where I would be if I stayed in some of those roles, I don't know how it would compare to where I am now. And I know life is not always linear, and I really try to accept that fact and enjoy the journey. And I think I am enjoying the journey, but I definitely think there could be a correlation or relationship there.
So tell me more where I would be versus where I am.
Hmm. I really don't love that this keeps coming back to the theme of money, but I gave up a higher paying salary and retirement accounts and benefits and all those things to do what I'm doing. And for the last 2 years, I've had to give up traveling and visiting friends and doing a lot of the things that I did in my 20s when, I had a little bit more disposable income, I suppose. So I have had to make some sacrifices. And when I see maybe some of my old colleagues or even college friends, I really try not to compare, but it's hard not to, of course. And I guess one of my fears is that I took such a big risk and such a big leap, and it may not pay off in the end. And so perhaps expanding my business is a way to kind of ensure that the decisions I made are justified.
I'm going to put something else in there. Expanding my business is a way to ensure that the sacrifices I made are justified or are
Yeah,
worth it.
I think so. And of course, I tell myself there's the internal motivation, the desire to build and create. And I do think that is a key part of it, but I don't think I can completely detach from the other side either.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. But I think it's really important to be able to put it in front of you and see it rather than it be behind you, sort of directing you. You can bring it to the front and say, okay, I know that I made these and these and these sacrifices. I haven't seen my friends in however many years. I haven't traveled. I haven't taken a vacation. And I want all that to mean something in the end.
Yeah.
And I want to create something beautiful. And I love the experience of the clients. And I love the food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's all this stuff that I've already paid. And there's something in you that wants that to mean something, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it already does mean something. I'm very proud of the impact we've had within our community. Our restaurants have always been a purpose driven business. We try to work with small local suppliers that have sustainable practices. We try to be good employers and do a lot of things that other restaurant owners don't do for their employees. I think my partner and I are very much inspired by the concept of conscious capitalism, where businesses don't exist just to make money or to maximize profit, but to give something back and to be kind of like an ecosystem, a living, breathing thing that interacts with others and provides good for the world.
So knowing that you're creating this ecosystem, as you said, that gives to the community, that gives to everyone around, that I think even gives to you. Do you see the expansion of the business as sort of not only a way for you to get back for the sacrifices and for all the time and the energy that you've invested, but also as a way to expand the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with more locations or a larger business means we can provide more jobs. And I know that sounds like kind of maybe a little shallow, like every business owner thinks they're providing jobs and like helping the economy. But no, I really think we want to be a good place to work, a safe place to work. And I do feel more purposeful doing what I do now than I ever did in any of my corporate jobs.
So that's interesting and that's important, right? If we go back to the idea then of where I would be versus where I am, this place where you are, you have more purpose than that place where you would be, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think so.
And so I'm wondering, you talked about the sacrifices before. Is knowing that you have purpose and that you found purpose, is that a good payment for the sacrifice? Or does it still come back to, and I want some money?
No, I think it's a good payment for the sacrifices.
You just kept coming back and you kept saying, oh, I can't believe this comes back to money. I can't believe this comes back to money. And I'm wondering if we see that this has also given you purpose, does it take a little bit of weight off of it comes back to money?
So I suppose with the money question, it's about uncertainty in the future, not knowing how things are going to turn out. Right now, I would say comfortable, but if things change, I could be a lot less comfortable, and that scares me a little bit. But I don't think that's the core thing that's driving me. I think it'd be a nice plus. It's a nice like additional benefit. Yeah.
So right there, when you were going, oh, I don't know, that's what's driving me. You don't have to have the word, but do you have a sense? Like, what does it feel like, that that drive?
I think it's just going forward and not becoming stagnant. Maybe I don't want to be too comfortable. Maybe I like the tension. Maybe I like the challenge. I mentioned I do like the rush, the adrenaline of taking on something new.
Brandon, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm wondering, are you suspicious of ambition, or is ambition suspicious to you?
Yeah, I actually think that's an excellent question because, as I mentioned, I think I always have been an ambitious person since I was as long as I can remember. And there have been, different stages in my life where I feel like I went down the wrong path because I was following things for superficial reasons, or because I felt like that was what was expected of me, or because I just wanted to be the best at whatever it was I was doing. And maybe I got a little too far away from my passions and my values. But right now, I feel like I can somehow align my ambitions with my value system and my passions. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But I do see how there could be maybe kind of a distrust of ambition or seeing ambition or overly ambitious as a bad thing. I don't want to be too greedy or attached to material things or material outcomes. And so perhaps that's where I'm having some doubts. Am I driven towards this direction because of the fears we've talked about from my childhood, or because I'm simply intrinsically motivated to explore things to their deepest level, or whatever reason? And so I know it's never an either or answer either. I know there's so many factors that come in kind of play together. And so I think I probably need to kind of accept that there will always be part of me that is motivated by some of those things, but without losing the other part of myself that wants to stay centered in my values and my passions.
And I don't think we need to like say, no, like eliminate all your fears, focus just on the things that motivate you. But it's about have them in front of you so you can see them.
Yeah.
Have them in front of you so you're conscious of both of them, just like you are right now. You know, these are the fears. You know, these are the motivators. You know, they're mixed. They're not completely separable, but they're in front of you and you know what they are rather than being behind you and you're sort of reacting to it. I'm just wondering, we touched on all these pieces of you. What does that show you about you?
I think that I'm a very determined person. I definitely don't like to give up easily. But I also recognize that there's part of me that feels like there's something I have to prove. And I need to be careful that that's not the key thing that's driving my decisions.
And so, knowing that, which is great, if you decided to expand your business, what's the imagination there? Like, walk me through that scenario. You call the developer and you say, I'm doing it.
There's a lot of pieces that would need to fall into place to even make it work. But overall, the idea of opening this new location does really excite me. I'm imagining the entire process. I'm imagining working with architects and opening those first days and weeks and getting to know new customers and figuring out all the little things we need to solve along the way, as stressful as that can be. So I think, I don't know, there's just part of me that feels like I want to keep moving forward. I know there's a lot of different ways to move forward, but
it seems like, that decision, if you were to take that path, there's an excitement and there's a puzzle that then you start to solve and you start to work on, and pieces that you start to put together. And there's quite a big rewarding feeling for you there.
Yeah.
Now, imagine the scenario where you call the developer and you say, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take it. What does that feel like?
It stings a little bit, honestly. I think it would be hard for me to go and see some other business in that location and think about what could have been. And we kind of talked about regrets or not living with regrets, and I don't want this to be one of those things that I regret in the future. But I also think I will accept it. I know I will move on. There will probably be another thing I'll get excited about in the future. So I know if it's not this one, there'll be something else.
Fair. But what I want to sort of leave you with is I want you to understand yourself better rather than like try to make it about the restaurant or about the location. There's the regrets that you just mentioned that you saw. And then there's this other part, the puzzle solver part of you is still very much alive and very excited to keep engaging with the world and keep solving puzzles and keep optimizing systems and keep producing. That part doesn't seem ready to just sort of sit down and watch the restaurants sell the food and just sort of enjoy the benefits.
Yeah.
Right? You said, I could be patient, wait a couple of years, and I don't know. You're so excited and you've got so much energy that I don't know if you can just sort of sit and wait for a couple of years without doing anything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. And yeah, I don't think I'm someone that will sit around and wait. And so again, if I say no to this, my mind will probably already be thinking about, well, if not this, then what? What's next?
So this is less about should I expand my business? This is more about what's my next project? What do I keep going with? Because I'm not ready to stop.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Thank you for sharing all of this, Brandon, because I think you're showing us how a business decision is not that separate from our personal lives, from our fears, from our desires. Like, it's so hard to separate all of those pieces, even though we try to say, personal life, family life, work life, they're all sort of the same life. They're all mixed in the same pot. And I think your question and this conversation has shown us just that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for speaking with me and letting me explore this topic and dive into the inner workings of, I guess, my mind and my motivations.
Right? Like the stories from our family, like you noticed, like from your childhood, the stories from your first years in the corporate world, like they all are still playing, and just being able to identify them helps us be clearer on who we want to tell right now.
Yeah, and who we want to be, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
This has been The Real Question. Our show is funded through our Patreon at patreon.com/realquestionpod. If you're a regular listener and you haven't come to look at our Patreon page and look at all the perks we offer, I would love you to stop by, and we would really love your support. Another way you can support this show is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. I love seeing your reviews. I love seeing how you support our guests in your reviews. Please leave one. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Real Question Pod, and we're always looking for more guests. So go to our website, realquestionpod.com, and submit a question. We love to shout out our BFF tier patrons, Renee Underhill and Amanda Schramm. Thank you. We are a Not Sorry production. Our executive producer is Vanessa Zoltan. We are edited and produced by Ariana Nettleman. Music is by Nick Bowl, and we are distributed by Acast. Support for this show comes from the Fetzer Institute. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. Thank you for introducing us to your business, for introducing us to the complexities of business and how it intertwines itself with our life, with our stories, with our childhood. Understanding what stories are in our past can also help us understand what stories we want to tell about our business. And thanks, as always, to our wonderful team: Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Yaramas, Anissa Ahmed, Danny Langley, Courtney Brown, Casper Turkile, Stephanie Paulsell. This has been The Real Question. Join us next week for another episode. See you then.